Om Ajnana-timirandasya Jnananjana-shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam. Vandeham Shri Guruhu Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitamscha. He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandhu Jagapate Gopesha Gopikanta Radha Kanta Namostute. Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye. Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Udirayet Nashta Prayeshu Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtiki Nivrita Tarshe Rupagiyamana Bhavo Shadachrotra Manobhiramat Kauttama Shloka Gunanuvadat Puman Virajyeta Vina Pashugnat. Glorification of the Supreme Personality of Godhead is performed in the Parampara system. That is, it is conveyed from spiritual master to disciple. Such glorification is relished by those no longer interested in the false temporary glorification of this cosmic manifestation. Descriptions of the Lord are the right medicine for the conditioned soul undergoing repeated birth and death. Therefore, who will cease hearing such glorification of the Lord except a butcher or one who is killing his own self? Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So we are reading from Canto 4, chapter 26, verse 26. Tanme prasida suhridah kritakilvishasya Svairam gatasya mrigayam vyasanaturasya Kadevaram vashagatam kusumastravega Vishrasta pausam ushati na bhajet kritye Tanme prasida surhidah kritakilvishasya Svairam gatasya mrigayam vyasanaturasya Kadevaram vasagatam kusumastravega Vishrastaponsnam ushati nhabhajet kritye Prabhujis. Tanme prasida suhridah kritakilvishasya Svairam gatasya mrigayam vyasanaturasya Kadevaram vashagatam kusumastravega Vishrastaponsnam ushati na bhajet kritye Tanme prasida suhridah kritakilvishasya Svairam gatasya mrigayam vyasanaturasya Kadevaram vashagatam kusumastravega Vishrastaponsnam ushati na bhajet kritye Tanme prasida surhidah kritakilvishasya Svairam gatasya mrigayam vyasanaturasya Kadevaram vashagatam kusumastravega Vishrastaponsnam ushati na bhajet kritye Ladies? Tanme prasida surhidah kritakilvishasya Svairam gatasya mrigayam vyasanaturasya Kadevaram vashagatam kusumastravega Vishrastaponsnam ushati na bhajet kritye Tanme prasida suhridah kritakilvishasya Svairam gatasya mrigayam vyasanaturasya Kadevaram Vashagatam Gasumastravega. Vishrastaponsnam ushati na bhajeta kritye. Tanme prasida surhiddaha krita kilbishasya. Svairam gatasya mrigayam vyasanaturasya. Kadevaram vashagatam kusumastravega. Vishrastaponsnam ushati na bhajeta kritye. The word for word equivalence. Tat, therefore, me, unto me, prasida, be kind, suhridaha, intimate friend, kritakilbishasya, having committed sinful activities, swairam, independently, gatasya, who went, mrigayam, hunting, vyasana aturasya, being influenced by sinful desire. Ka, what woman? Devaram, the husband. Vashagatam, under her control. Kusuma astravega, pierced by the arrow of Cupid. Visrasta, scattered. Pausnam, his patience. Ushati, very beautiful. Na, never. Bhajeta, would embrace. Kritye, in proper duty. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. My dear Queen, due to my sinful desires, I went to the forest to hunt without asking you. Therefore, I must admit that I have offended you. Nonetheless, thinking of me as your most intimate subordinate, you should still be very much pleased with me. Factually, I am very much bereaved, but being pierced by the arrow of Cupid, I am feeling lusty. But where is the beautiful woman who would give up her lusty husband and refuse to unite with him? Purport. Both man and woman desire one another. That is the basic principle of material existence. Women in general always keep themselves beautiful so that they can be attractive to their lusty husbands. When a lusty husband comes before his wife, the wife takes advantage of his aggressive activities and enjoys life. Generally, when a woman is attacked by a man, whether her husband or some other man, she enjoys the attack, being too lusty. In other words, when one's intelligence is properly utilized, both the intellect and the intelligent person enjoy one another with great satisfaction. As stated in Srimad Bhagavatam 7:9-45. Yanmai tunadi grihamedi sukham hitucham kandu yanena karayoriva dukkha dukkham. The actual happiness of the karmis is sex life. They work very hard outside the home, and to satiate their hard labor, they come home to enjoy sex life. King Puranjana went to the forest to hunt, and after his hard labor, he returned home to enjoy sex life. If a man lives outside the home and spends a week in a city or somewhere else, at the end of the week he becomes very anxious to return home and enjoy sex with his wife. This is confirmed in Srimad Bhagavatam, Yanmaithunadi grihmedi sukkam hitucham. Karmis work very hard simply to enjoy sex. Modern human society has improved the materialistic way of life simply by inducing unrestricted sex life in many different ways. This is prominently visible, most prominently visible in the Western world. Thus in the Bhaktivedanta purports of the 4th canto, 26th chapter of the Srimad Bhagavatam, entitled, King Puranjana goes to the forest to hunt, and his queen becomes angry. So please bless us so that we may speak to glorify Krishna and Prabhupada's purports. So I looked at this verse and said, Krishna, you're so kind. Okay, so more blessings, please. So just recapping, King Puranjana has gone to the forest to hunt and his queen becomes angry. That's the title of the chapter, very clear. And we'll recall that this is an allegory that is given, an example, a story to instruct the king Barhishat, Prachini Barhishat, by Narada Muni, because he has great concern about what he's doing and he wants to, in a gentle way, convey to him what is the right way in which to conduct one's activities. And to his credit, King Prachini Barhishat is willing to listen. So that's very nice. And the problem was that Barhishat was too much engrossed by material life and had lost his way in a spiritual sense and was focused more on material enjoyment as the sole purpose of life. So Narada Muni has given an allegory of a king Puranjana, whose life mirrors that of King Barhishat and ourselves, and that enables him to therefore understand his mistake. So we take up the allegory where King Puranjana has now gone out to kill and hunt the animals, much the same with Prachini Barhishat, and that represents material sense gratification, that endeavor to go out away from a spiritual pathway. And then he returns home to his wife. And Prabhupada explains that represents coming to his senses to pursue activities that are more conducive to spiritual life. So this is very important that we understand there are two levels of meaning to note. There are two levels of meaning that we need to understand. And those two levels are important to appreciate so that we can understand the purport of Srila Prabhupada in the right frame of mind. So the allegory is, shall we say, the essence of the instruction. That is the message that is being given. And secondly, what is happening in the allegory at the time of this verse is the more literal meaning, the events that are occurring. So remember that. There are two levels of meaning. The first is the allegory, which is the essence of the instruction that is trying to be given by Narada Muni. And the second part is the literal meaning of what is occurring over here, the actual allegory or example itself. And on both levels there are valuable instructions. So, what then is the essence? The essence of the instructions is the waste of material activity when not connected with Krishna. So King Prachini Barhishat has gone off, Puranjana has gone off to kill animals, to hunt away from the wife. And this activity we can understand is not connected with spiritual endeavor. It is not connected with making a relationship with Krishna. It is not connected with spiritual life. So the essence of the instruction is that this is a waste of material activity, is a waste of time. Srimad Bhagavatam says so nicely, Shrama eva hi kevalam. Shrama eva hi kevalam. This is useless labor. So this is the very clear point that is being made. And this is an important theme of Srimad Bhagavatam. As we know the seed verses 2:9-34, Rite artham yat pratiyetat na pratiyeta chatmani Tadvidyadatmano mayam yatha basho yatha tamaha. So, ritartham, without value. There are things that are without value. And this is Lord Krishna saying to Brahma that whatever appears to be of any value, so-called material activities, if they are not related to me, then they have no reality. So, just like King Prachinabarshit, Puranjana have gone out, they have engaged in activities, they are not connected to Krishna, so they have no value. And then we know, Krishna says, know it as my illusory energy, tadvidyad atmanomayam, that reflection which appears to be in darkness. So Maya is there. The activities of King Puranjana are in that domain of Maya. So the question, why should Maya be there? Why should Maya be there? Like often people ask, they go, oh, this is not fair. You know, like why doesn't Krishna just, why does he create this here for us? He can just, help us along here. This doesn't make sense. So we understand that Maya has two functions. She has the covering potency and she has the throwing potency. So she covers our ability to see Krishna. She covers our ability to connect with Krishna, and then she throws us where? Into material existence, much the same as has been experienced by King Prachinabarshit as well as Puranjana. So actually, this is interesting now. She does the same thing as Krishna. I was reading this point. This is very interesting. Does the same thing as Krishna? So the living entity is attracted by Krishna. But in case that is insufficient, and that's our situation, like, we don't have any attraction for Krishna, right? So we're trying. So Prabhupada said that Maya is behind. Maya is behind the living entity, and she is kicking the living entity hard in the direction of Krishna. So from the Prema Vivarta, Jagannath Pandit says, Krishna bahirmukha hana bhoga vanchakara nikatastha maya tare japatiya dhare. So Krishna bahirmukha, as soon as we are turning ourselves away, our face away from Krishna, Krishna bahirmukha hana bhoga vanchakare, we are trying to enjoy separately. So this is what King Prachinabarshit is doing. This is what Puranjana enjoys separately from Krishna. Then Nikata, close by, stha, standing, is Maya. Maya is right there. And she's not just standing there. She's japatiya dhare. She's slapping that person, giving a good slap. So this is, I love the japatiya. It's really nice. We need a slap every now and then, huh? So Srila Prabhupada said, just as the job of Maya and the job of Krishna, Prabhupada said, is the same. Same job. But Krishna is like a loving father and is reaching out his hands and asking you to come to him. But Maya is the person who is behind you and gives you a good kick in that direction. So one is the nice way and one is the harder way. So this allegory is teaching us that there's a hard way to do things and then there's an easy way to do things we can understand by our intelligence. So the literal meaning demonstrates that King Puranjana, now we're going to the literal meaning now. That was the essence, the essential meaning. But now we're looking at the allegory, and this will help put Prabhupada's purport into context, which is essential. So King Puranjana is expressing remorse for going to the forest to hunt in this verse. He's then saying sorry to his wife. I thought, smart man, very intelligent. Say sorry to your wife. Good. Note the point down. Take notes on that. And in this situation, if we're sorry, whether it's wife or husband, right, we can carry on with devotional service without stress. And we can learn from that. Because if you hang on to the conflict and you hang on to the distress, then one is thinking of that, then how can we chant Krishna's name with feeling if we are worried? We have chinta, right? We shouldn't have chinta, we shouldn't have worry. So just, Hare Krishna, I'm so sorry. My Guru Maharaj says nicely, it doesn't matter. Okay, that's fine. How can you say it doesn't matter? Then Maharaj says, it's material. This is material. Material doesn't matter, so leave the material. This conflict is based on material level. Just leave it. Doesn't matter. Hare Krishna, move on. So this Kunti Maharani does it very nicely. She accepts, okay, there were so many things that went wrong. So many things that went wrong. You tried to poison, Bhima. You tried to burn us alive. But she's just accepting, and then she moves on, connects with Krishna. So this acceptance and then leaving things as they are and focusing on Krishna gives the living entity the right approach in these circumstances. So we can learn from that. And the second point is the admission of offense. So he said that, I'm sorry, I made a mistake. I went out to hunt. So the admission of offense is a very nice thing to do. Very good quality because it allows reflection. Oh, sorry, Prabhu. Sorry, Mataji. I did wrong. And then it allows rectification. Very, very often, don't we stop at the point before that? Like we don't admit anything. Like we didn't do anything wrong. And if we like that, then we're never going to improve. And I think that's a very excellent quality if we're trying to learn things. Very elementary, but so hard to do. So hard to do. But the best students, no doubt, say that, yes, I have made a mistake, so please correct me. Okay. And then he says he is the, quote, most intimate subordinate. This is King Puranjana. He says, quote, I am the most intimate subordinate. In other words, he is invoking his queen's sense of mercy and groveling, begging to invoke her favor. Then he says he is feeling lusty and saying that because he is in that situation, she should satisfy his lusty desires. So, understanding how King Puranjana is thinking gives us the ability then to appreciate Srila Prabhupada's purport properly. So the purport Prabhupada emphasizes that in material life, sex desire is the, quote, basic principle of material existence. Basic principle of material existence. And this is the inferior expression of love when it's often based on personal gain. This is what Puranjana is expressing. He says, I'm really, really sorry, and I've done everything bad, and I'm your most intimate subordinate, and then why don't you do something for me? So this is the, this is not unmotivated or uninterrupted like bhakti, which is we can contrast that. So therefore, now this is why all this qualification is necessary. The description of a woman being attacked by a man, and Srila Prabhupada emphasizes that both parties in this material example are consenting parties, quote, the wife takes advantage of his aggressive activities and enjoys life, end quote, so it's consenting, is only commentary on a general level. Prabhupada mentions the word general. Very important, because we must not fall into the trap of taking one line out of Bhagavatam and then saying that, being critical of Prabhupada when we're not understanding context. Context is essential. So this does not apply to devotees or devotee behaviors who are not interested or at least aspiring to go beyond material sense gratification as previously discussed. So this behavior is being discussed is material behavior. And it is never sanctioned by Prabhupada in his purports. And if we go to previous purports, Prabhupada has given the nice example of how the wife and the husband should be in this chapter. So given that the rest of the purport is a critique of wanton sexual indulgence, it should be very clear that what Prabhupada is describing here is not the recommended interaction between male and female. It's very clear. Then to leave us with no doubt, if we are introspective, Prabhupada leaves us with no doubt, he quotes 7.945, Prahlad Maharaj's prayers. And the first two lines translate as, sex life is compared to the rubbing of two hands to relieve an itch. Grihamedis, so these are household devotees who have lost the purpose of life, so-called grahastas, who have no spiritual knowledge, think that this itching is the greatest platform of happiness, although it is a source of distress, end quote. So if we contextualize this properly, we understand Prabhupada is not glorifying this aggressive behavior. Quite the opposite. So then the rest of the verse, the two lines takes it even further. The rest of that verse that Prabhupada quotes, the translation is, the kripanas means like misers, the fools who are just the opposite of brahmanas are not satisfied by repeated sensuous enjoyment. Those who are dhira, however, who are sober and who tolerate this itching are not subject to the sufferings of fools and rascals. That's the translation of Prahlad Maharaj's prayer. So kripana, miser, beautiful word. It even sounds good. Kripana, so good. Don't be a miser. So it's a beautiful word. We are using, if we are kripana, the asset of the human form of life for self-indulgence instead of self-realization, and to achieve the goal of life's existence, which is Krishna Prema. So then we are being miserly. The valuable human form of life is being used in that way. We are really miserly if we are not utilizing it in that way. So what is the solution for the itch? Now this is really good news. We got a solution for it, because Prabhupada has said it's very powerful, very difficult, and we're going to cover that in the end with a little pastime, how difficult it is. What is the solution for relieving that itch? So Srila Prabhupada in the purport gives two solutions very nicely. In Bhagavad Gita 7:14, Prabhupada quotes, Mam eva ye prapadyante mayam etam tarantite. So if one voluntarily submits to the lotus feet of Krishna, he can be saved very easily. So surrendering to the lotus feet of Krishna is our only hope. You know, we are very fallen, and Maya is so powerful, especially this particular potency of Maya. And if we surrender to Krishna, Prabhupada assures us, Krishna assures us that it can be overcome very easily. And secondly, higher taste. Higher taste is there. The higher taste renders a distaste for the inferior taste. So once we have that higher taste, we take the association of the devotees, we hear Bhagavad Gita, Bhagavatam, our chanting process, coming to the morning program in the temple. This will keep us out of danger, associating with the devotees. So powerful process. So we have great examples. Yamunacharya. He was formerly a great king who enjoyed sexual happiness in various ways. And later he engaged himself in the Lord's service, enjoying superior spiritual bliss. What did he have to say about this situation when he himself was faced with so much difficulty? How did he extricate himself from that? He says, since I have been engaged in the transcendental loving service of Krishna, realizing ever new pleasure in him, whenever I think of sex pleasure, I spit at the thought, and my lips curl with distaste. And it's so nice that he uses the following phrase, Nava Nava Rasa. Nava Nava means it's new, it's ever new. Rasa, this is like a flavor, like juice. We're all after rasa, but we're going for the inferior rasa instead of the high rasa. Just like Dhruv Maharaj said, I came looking for, I thought I was going for the jackpot, but what did I find now? I found that I was actually looking for broken glass. So this ever new taste are the words used to describe spiritual rasa, Nava Nava Rasa. And then there are some other points to raise in terms of this allegory. As per verse 4:25:56, so previous chapter, King Puranjana, and we're just fleshing out the final points I want to draw out from the allegory. King Puranjana is described as being completely under the control of his wife. And in that purport, Puranjana represents the living entity, says Srila Prabhupada, and the wife in that instance represents material intelligence. So we should be careful. Prabhupada uses different analogies and different levels in the different purports, and that can be confusing. So just to bring that out, that this material intelligence is understood to lead the living entity astray from spiritual advancement. So that's a different contextual use of that in that purport by Prabhupada. Okay, so Prabhupada will use in one way and then maybe use in a different way. So we shouldn't mix up the levels of the meaning that are being conveyed and say that they are the same thing. So there's a difference there. And then in 426.16, in terms of literal understanding, so Prabhupada takes a literal approach. Srila Prabhupada talks about how a good wife is good intelligence. So Prabhupada is not being, negative, shall we say, towards females. That's an important point. Because it's an analogy and it can be used to convey meaning for the purposes of conveying higher spiritual knowledge in different ways. And Prabhupada does that. And I'm just demonstrating that point by quoting different ways in which Prabhupada has given different understandings of the allegory. So the wife can be good intelligence, and when the king moves away from good intelligence, then he's bereft of good sense. That's a nice point to be made. And Srila Prabhupada states in that purport, there is no difference between a good wife and good intelligence. So this is a nice point to be made and reflected upon. Then in verse 4:26:12 purport, the queen represents something entirely different again. Quoting Prabhupada, just as King Puranjana began to search out his better half, the queen, one who is decorated with knowledge and instructions from saintly persons, should try to search out his original consciousness, Krishna consciousness. So the queen in that explanation is representing the original consciousness and Krishna consciousness. So the queen represents different things in the allegory. In one instance, the queen is material intelligence. Another instance, the queen is good intelligence. And in yet another instance, Krishna consciousness. The ultimate intelligence, we can say. So the queen is now representing different levels of intelligence. So we mustn't get confused that there are different levels of the allegory. And I'd like to finish on this pastime. As you all know, it's a very nice pastime. I'm sure many of you know it. We have Bilva Mangala Thakur. He really explains the difficulties that are encountered by such an exalted devotee, born in a nice South Indian Brahmana family, had all facility for spiritual life. However, Bilva Mangala Thakur, he fell down with a prostitute named Chintamani. It's very nice. The name is Chintamani. It's like a jewel, and Chinta means you got worried. So you got big worries if you're pursuing Chintamani. And our problem is in one way or another, we're all pursuing Chintamani. So it's relevant to our situation. So he had this problem, and she ultimately, satisfied his deepest desire, and he became like very consumed with lust for Chintamani. Every day, instead of Hare Krishna, he's going Chintamani, Chintamani, Chintamani. So even immediately after performing the Shraddha rituals, so he's meant to perform the rituals for, his deceased father, and he had said to her, look, sorry, I won't meet up with you tomorrow because I've got the Shraddha ceremony, so, please excuse me, we'll catch up later. But even on that day, he suddenly decided, oh, Chintamani, I have to go. So he quickly finishes, even on the day that he's meant to honor his father, he can't handle the internal desire. And moreover, it's not like nice Sydney weather, it's like, Melbourne weather. Raging storm, tossing waves could not deter him in lustful delusion. He's trying to cross the river, and all the boatmen and everyone are just, they're saying, oh, I'm not going there. It's like, if you want to die, just go in there. The waves are so high and the wind is just killing. And he said, no, you guys are just, you're weak. And he sees something and he thinks it's a log, so I'm going to grab the log. But actually the log is not a log, the log is a corpse. He grabs the log corpse to cross this turbulent river. And this is expressing, how severe and intense that he's willing to do all that just for Chintamani. And then he gets to Chintamani's place and the gate is locked and he's looking around. Oh What am I going to do? No lift, no nothing. I can see, there's a rope. I'm going to grab onto the rope, but it's not a rope, it's actually a cobra. And he thinks it's a rope. So he foolishly grabs the cobra. And then he reaches Chintamani's place. And Chintamani is there. And she sees Bilva Mangala soaking wet, burning with desire, totally exhausted. And Chintamani then says something extraordinary. You're so much attached to this lowly bag of flesh and bones. Better you become attached to serving the blissful Lord Govinda. Go to Vrindavan, and there you will find complete satisfaction and eternal happiness. So on the way to Vrindavan, he's taken the message, he's full of enthusiasm, and then what happens? Again, Maya comes, material desires. He sees a Brahmana's wife who's most beautiful, and in this situation, he just wants to take in her beauty, and then he feels ashamed of his polluted desires. So then he gouges his eyes out, so that they shall no longer gaze upon the form of anything different or separate from Krishna. So this blind Bilva Mangala was determined not to be distracted from the spiritual path by any material object. I'm not saying we do that, but the message is there that he's very determined. So he wrote Krishna Karnamrita, his most famous work. It's a very highly advanced, authentic book to reveal the position of Radharani in Sri Krishna's Vrindavan Madhurya Lila. And he got a name Lila Sukha for his expertise in describing this Madhurya Rasa. So this is the highest level of spiritual understanding of the relationships that Krishna has. And he felt so much ecstasy from singing about Govinda's pastime, and he's famous for his veena, that the millions of the sense objects that were there now became insignificant. And he was so much the epitome of love for Krishna that Krishna would personally give Bilva Mangala Prasadam and lead him to a safe resting place. And at first, Lila Sukha didn't know the identity of this sweet Vrajavasi boy. But one day, Bihari Lal, Krishna, played his captivating flute for the blind man, and suddenly Bilva Mangala became mad with desire to behold the beautiful sweet form of Shyam Sundar. Realizing that this Vrajavasi boy was actually the Lord of his life and the love of his heart, he reached out to touch Krishna. Playful Gopal touched Bilva Mangala's hand, laughed lovingly, and ran away. Singing, Bilva Mangala said, "You can run away from my hand, but you can never leave my heart." So I'll stop there. Gives us some time to maybe have some comments, some corrections, please. Maybe we can understand in a better way. So please don't hesitate to share. Prabhuji. So this is 10.9. What's the first line of that? Yes. Madchitta madgata prana bodhayanta parasparam kathayantascha mam nityam tushyanti cha ramanti cha. So this is talking about devotees' behavior. Satata yuktanam. They are always engaged in Krishna katha. And they derive great satisfaction and bliss from conversing amongst one another about Krishna, bodhayanta parasparam. So that's what we are doing now. That's why Prabhupada says, nice Bhagavatam class. And generally speaking, we have more of a backward and forward discussion like this. It's very enlivening for the devotees. So in this case, it's more going along, and I considered that because I was wondering, that line appears in the purport. It's kind of like out of nowhere. And Prabhupada doesn't do things for no reason. So I understand that line in the context of the previous allegorical explanations given by Prabhupada, where he says that wife is good intelligence, for example. It's on the level of that type of explanation. But no doubt, if we understand, it is said by our acharyas, that if someone has intelligence, the best repository of that intelligence is to apply that intelligence to the pastimes of Radha and Krishna. That is the best utilization of that intelligence. It's not in physics, it's not in, material knowledge. That's not the true, way to give the value to the intelligence as great as anyone may have in so-called mental speculation, philosophical things. But to repose that intelligence in understanding the pastimes and celebrating the pastimes of Krishna, that is the best way that one's intelligence should be utilized. So on that level, definitely, we can understand that Prabhupada is making that point. And then we can just give a class on just those 2 lines, because that is how we should be utilizing our intelligence. So nice. I'm glad you brought that point out. I didn't touch on it, but that's a very interesting thing Prabhupada has done, just to put that in there in the midst of everything else. And it seems it's not relevant, but it is, because it brings out all those other points. So thank you for bringing that forward, Prabhu. The next verses are very difficult, so whoever's got them, you better start reading now. I read them and I said, okay, Krishna, at least you gave me some scope. Yes, Prabhu. Yes. Yeah, that's a really nice question. So the question is, how do we not, for example, take meanings out of context? And the examples given, about the Pandavas. You're saying the Pandavas are this or that, or there may be interpretations from a mundane point of view. Yeah. The key is given early part of Bhagavatam that. What is the adhikar? What is the qualification for approaching Bhagavatam? And the qualification is that we must certainly be very submissive, very humble, and approach Bhagavatam in a systematic way. We should not selectively jump to sections of Bhagavatam or sections of things that are quoted by Prabhupada without understanding the broader context. Yeah? Because some things are variously said, and it's nice you're playing the devil's advocate, because this is something that should concern all devotees, because sometimes we see that things are taken out of context, and then the standing of our founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada can be criticized. So we must be very knowledgeable and understanding that if Bhagavatam is approached in a systematic way and in a submissive way, just as Bhagavad Gita says that, tad vidi pranipatena pariprashnena sevaya. We must approach the spiritual master submissively. We must approach asking questions. Already someone who is critical, they usually have made up their mind. They're not being open-minded. So if one is open-minded and also utilizing the intelligence, we can understand that Prabhupada cannot be criticized in these ways or indeed other ways. Because Prabhupada's whole approach to spiritual instruction is based upon his example. And if anyone reads, for example, Your Ever Well-Wisher, we just tell them, read Your Ever Well-Wisher. You will see Prabhupada's number 1 miracles and number 2 Prabhupada's love. So then how can someone who's so loving say anything contrary to a loving approach to the living entities, for example? So that's one point. The second point is obviously in Nectar of Instruction. The nice instruction is given that we need to accept those things that are favorable for our devotional service and reject those things that are not favorable for our devotional service. So obviously if we are questioning in such a way that is both challenging, that is non-submissive, and we're not doing it for the sake of really internal progress or realization, then we are not fully surrendering. So Bhagavatam and Bhagavad Gita and the instructions of Krishna must be approached in a surrendering mentality. And we often see that if we don't surrender, we won't learn. And from a practical point of view, we can understand this, like, in the course of our professional activity, I'm involved in teaching. And I see there are two types of students. First student is challenging. You want to give them feedback. And they say no. They don't want to listen. Okay, would you consider it this way? And they will counter-argue and counter-argue. Then I just stop. I'm not going to discuss with you. I'm not going to share anything with you. That's fine. You don't want to hear? You're correct. Zip. Whereas the other student who goes, no, please tell me. Please tell me where I'm going wrong. I want to learn. Now they're going to get everything from me because I'm enlivened, they're so submissive, I'm going to reveal all that. And our Shastras say very clearly that the person who has full faith in the instructions of the spiritual master, to only them will the deeper purport of the spiritual literature, the Vedas, be revealed. So that is a very clear point. So the person who may take that approach, they are losing out. What to do? We should be loving to them. We should be kind to them. We should allow the mercy of the parampara to flow and not be critical. And then maybe something might happen. Something might happen. It's a nice question, nice point. I think they'll be very relevant for the verses coming up. Especially, good luck. Whoever's giving it, I'm coming to listen on that day. Oh, good. That's good. Granthad Srimad Bhagavatam ki. Srila Prabhupada, Transcendental Purports ki. Shri Radha Gopinath ki. Nitai Gaura Premanande Haribo.